SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.
Good evening, Philippines, and good day, world. I am Franco Baranda. It's Tuesday, the 12th day of September, and you're watching Newsline World. We're here to bring you the top stories we've gathered from all over the globe. First, Ombudsman Samuel Martires said his office has dismissed a red tagging complaint filed against Lieutenant General Parlade, former NTF-LCAC Undersecretary Lorraine Badoy, and former National Security Advisor Hermogenes Esperon. Following the devastation that struck Morocco, rescuers race against time to find survivors trapped under the rubble as the death toll nears 2,500. Ukraine fumes while Russia and its allies praise the recently concluded G20 summit in New Delhi. Nap jokes talks about third world countries and ramblings. U.S. President Joe Biden's press conference in Vietnam ended abruptly by his White House press secretary. Let's find out more about this later on. And Japan has concluded the first phase of the release of the treated radioactive wastewater from the crippled Fukushima nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean. These and more for tonight's edition of Newsline World. Solutions to the widespread corruption in the Philippines have been put forward as the focal point of discussions during the hearing on the 2024 budget of the Office of the Ombudsman. MJ Mondihar reports.
The Ombudsman ranks first among agencies overseeing corruption issues within the government. During the hearing of the agency's proposed 2024 budget, public watchdogs raised questions about whether corruption cases in the Philippines are on the rise.
Mr. Chair, is there a trend on the incidence of this rate of these cases? Ito po ba sa tingin niyo po ay nag-i-increase po o nagdi-decrease po, Mr. Chair?
While Martires didn't immediately provide an answer, he later acknowledged a significant increase in corruption cases.
Yung kung nagtaas po ang incidence ng mga gawain ito, ang korupsyon po ay hindi titigil sa ating bansa. Not even during our lifetime.
Martires further stated that the corruption in the Philippines has become endemic and appears to be normalized among Filipinos, especially within the government.
Ang korupsyon po ngayon sa Pilipinas ay nagiging endemic. Ang korupsyon po ngayon sa Pilipinas ay nagiging parang fashion, becomes a fad. Because money becomes power. Mayroong mga departamento ng gobyerno, hindi nyo akalain ay korap, akala nyo natutulog, pero mas korap pala yun sa ibang ahensya ng gobyerno na akala nyo ay korap.
Martires then offered a solution, strengthening efforts to instill good behavior, starting with the youth.
Ang korupsyon po sa ngayon ay hindi mapaglalabanan ng batas lamang. All our laws on corruption are post factum, after the fact. Kailangan po natin ng isang haligi na magbabago po ng ating ugali. We have to introduce, as I've always been saying, a subject from kindergarten until college on God-centered values formation.
He emphasized that this should not just be about teaching good manners and right conduct, but should also be centered around the fear of God. With this, there's no hope of changing the culture of corruption among Filipinos.
Kung magtuturo lang po tayo ng good manners and right conduct na hindi po nakasentro sa Panginoon, wala akong kwenta yon. To fight corruption, to stop this incidence of corruption, is to introduce a subject through a law, a good manners and right conduct subject that is God-centered.
Congress members, meanwhile, agreed with the Ombudsman's statements. Martires also reminded the lawmakers of the increasing incidence of corruption in the country.
We do not fear hell anymore. Wala hong impyerno sa iba sa atin. So gumagawa po tayo ng krimen sa ngayon po sa ating kagustuhan. So if we're talking about corruption, if we're talking about incidents of corruption, if it is increasing, Your Honors. Thank you very much.
Regardless of any religious preferences, the advice or the suggestion of Ombudsman Martires is meant to convince the government to teach the God-centered GMRC in all children in the Philippines as soon as possible. For Ganang Mabulong Philippines, I'm Jay Mondihar, SMNI News.
Vice President Sara Duterte thanked President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and several government officials who she said stood by the office of the Vice President as it is currently facing attacks regarding its 2022 confidential funds. Jason Rubrico reports.
In her statement released this Monday morning, Vice President Sara Duterte thanked Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin for a detailed presentation of facts about the 2022 confidential funds of the OVP, which explained that the requests, approval, and spending of the funds had not violated any law. Vice President Duterte also thanked Defense Secretary Gilbert Chodoro for upholding the creation of the Vice Presidential Security and Protection Group, which rebuked individuals and groups that harbor intense animosity against institutions tasked to ensure peace and security. The Vice President also extended her gratitude to Marikina's 2nd District Representative Stella Kimbo because of the official's brave and reasonable approach to the group of individuals who fabricate lies. Vice President Duterte said she appreciates efforts that help counter the lies told by Representative Franz Castro and the Makabayan bloc in Congress regarding the said confidential funds. Meanwhile, the Vice President said that while Senator Risa Hontiveros amuses the nation with her talent for drama, there is nothing she could do but wish that the use of the said fund is illegal. Vice President Duterte also expressed shame that they still cannot present evidence to support what she called as their dirty imagination. The Vice President added that the annoyance they caused in Congress and the Senate would have been enough for them not to be given serious attention. Vice President Duterte believes that the lies being spread to the public will eventually lose its charm, and OVP and DepEd will persist in achieving their aspirations for the Filipinos and the country. For God and my beloved Philippines, I am Jason Rubrico, SMNI News.
The deadly devastation also wiped out villages in the hills of the Atlas Mountains in Morocco. Melchizedek Cadiz reports.
Search continues for Moroccan citizens still trapped under the rubble of a rare and powerful earthquake that hit the North African country just before midnight on Friday. The epicenter of the earthquake was located in the high Atlas Mountain range about 72 kilometers southwest of Marrakesh, a city of about 840,000 people. Residents in the city slept in the streets for the third straight night as people comforted each other while digging graves for the earthquake victims. International aid teams arrived in remote mountain towns hit hardest by the historic tremor, while foreign search and rescue teams are helping locate the missing. For decades, the affected area only experienced tremors lower than 6.0, hence making the 6.8 magnitude earthquake the biggest in more than 100 years, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. Flags were lowered as Morocco's King Mohammed VI ordered 3 days of national mourning starting on Sunday. Meanwhile, Kuwaiti banks donated $5 million to the Kuwaiti Banking Association to support aid and rebuilding efforts in Morocco. Reporting, this has been Melchizedek Cadiz, SMNI News, Kuwait.
The press secretary of the White House abruptly ended U.S. President Joe Biden's rambling during a press conference in Vietnam. Andrea Santos files this report.
Joe Biden concluded his first Asian trip as president with a press conference in Hanoi, Vietnam. However, it was marred by awkward jokes and rambling about the third world. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre abruptly ended Biden's press conference, cutting him off mid-sentence as he talked about the third world in his Chang. The U.S. president took numerous scheduled questions from the media, telling reporters that he was going to bed, although he kept answering additional questions, including his talk with Premier Lee at the G20 summit in India on Saturday. According to Biden, the talks with Lee were not confrontational at all.
We talked about at the conference overall. We talked about stability. We talked about making sure that the third world, the Southern Hemisphere had access to change it, had access. It wasn't confrontational at all. He came up to me.
Thank you, everybody. This ends the press conference. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
After attempting to answer another question, Biden turned around and walked off stage. This comes as many Democrats' concerns regarding the 80-year-old U.S. president's health. According to an NBC News survey in June of this year, 43% of Democrats said that they had moderate to major concerns about Biden's health. Meanwhile, reports say the U.S. president's press conference are typically tightly managed by his aides. Biden's Vietnam trip came as the United States attempts to bolster ties with Asian countries in a bid to counter China's growing influence in the region. Reporting, this is Andrea Santos, SMNI News.
In Japan, the company responsible for the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant announced the completion of the first phase of its discharge of treated radioactive wastewater into the Pacific Ocean. Kent Hashimoto reports.
Tokyo Electric Power Company said the first phase of their discharge of nuclear contaminated water into the sea is scheduled to end as planned. The first phase contains 7,800 tons of nuclear contaminated water that was dumped into the ocean, and the second phase will possibly begin as early as late September. Chinese Premier Lee criticized that dumping nuclear contaminated water will cause global marine and economic problems. Japan started discharging nuclear contaminated wastewater from the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean on August 24. In the recent talks between China, Japan, South Korea, and Jakarta, Indonesia, Tokyo said it will continue providing information regarding the wastewater discharge. Ijo Nihon kara no Hashimoto Kento deshita. SMNI News, Japan.
Sweden and Ukraine announced a plan to jointly produce combat vehicles to upgrade the capability of the Ukrainian armed forces. Kirby Hilton tells us more.
Ukraine and Sweden will jointly produce the Combat Vehicle 90, a family of Swedish track armored combat vehicles. Both sides aim to produce at least 1,000 CV-90 infantry fighting vehicles with better all-terrain performance and reinforced multi-layer armor. Ukrainian Deputy Minister of Defense Hanna Maliar described the modern combat vehicle as the best one in the world. The combat vehicle boasts effective anti-tank weapons and a powerful automatic 40mm gun, which can fire at a distance of up to 3 kilometers, and its maximum range is more than 12 kilometers. Ukraine's armed forces first received CV-90s in the summer of 2023, with the vehicles already performing combat missions on the front. In August, Sweden announced its 13th military support package to Ukraine worth $314 million and has provided a total of $1.6 billion since the start of the war. This has been Kirby Trinidad, SMNI News.
More news when Newsline World returns.
Kabayan! Oo, ikaw. Alam mo ba na you can win lots of prizes when you bring home a guest in the Philippines? The Department of Tourism brings you the Visita Be My Guest program. Joining is easy. 1. Sign up as a sponsor. You can do this via the official BBMG website. All Filipinos of legal age living in the Philippines or abroad can join. 2. Invite your guests. The more you invite, the more chances of winning. And 3. Travel to the Philippines and upload your proof of travel to complete the registration process and earn e-raffle tickets and the BBMG travel passport and privilege card that you can use to get discounts as you travel around our award-winning destinations in the Philippines. Join now and get a chance to win in any of the 3 raffle dates in 2023. So what are you waiting for? Come home and bring your guests to the Philippines. Sign up, invite friends and family, and travel to the world's leading beach and dive destination and the world's leading country destination for tourism the Philippines. Bisita, be my guest in the Philippines.
Hey, we're glad you found SMNI News. If you subscribe to TV programs that help build the nation, then we got you covered. Watch your favorite TV shows through GSAT TV Channel 40, Cignal TV Channel 186. And if you are a Sky Cable subscriber, you can watch SMNI in National Capital Region, Sky Cable Channel 162, Cebu, Sky Cable Channel 37, Davao City, Sky Cable Channel 14, 43, and 46, General Santos City, Sky Cable Channel 37, Zamboanga, Sky Cable Channel 53, Bacolod, Sky Cable Channel 37, Iloilo, Sky Cable Channel 36, Dumaguete, Sky Cable Channel 37, Baguio, Sky Cable Channel 14, and Laoag, Sky Cable Channel 10. You may also watch SMNI on digital TV in Davao City and Manila, and also in TV Plus and GMA Afford the Box, and over 500 cable TV affiliates nationwide. Watch SMNI on digital channels in Mega Manila, Channel 39 and 43. We are also on analog TV in Laoag, Channel 35, Isabela, Channel 37, Vigan, Channel 38, Roxas, Channel 39, Butuan, Channel 39, and Davao, Channel 43. If you're on your mobile phone, download SMNI app or visit smni.com to get the latest news, updates, and more. Also, browse through the day's top stories and receive notifications for breaking news. Watch us live on our official Facebook and Rumble accounts, and you can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, so you don't miss out on our extra minute segments. Wherever you decide to watch, we're glad you choose SMNI News, the home of nation builders who bravely bring truth that matters.
The Ombudsman has rejected a case against several government officials known for their anti-communist terrorist group stance. MJ Mondihar reports.
Some of the topics discussed during the deliberations of the 2024 proposed budget of the Office of the Ombudsman at the House of Representatives are likely a triumphant feat for former government officials who are against the communist terrorist group CPP, NPA, NDF. This is after Kabataan Party List Representative Raul Manuel asked Ombudsman Samuel Martires for updates on the cases filed against former Task Force LCAC officials. These officials include former NTF LCAC spokesperson Lorraine Badoy, former AFP General Antonio Parlade, and former National Security Advisor Hermogenes Esperon. The cases are related to the issue of red tagging leftist groups.
Ano na po ang status ng 6 na administrative complaints and 2 criminal cases? Since ang last po doon sa ating na-enumerate ay na-file pa noong December 2020.
Ombudsman Martires responded that the cases related to red tagging had been dismissed.
Is referring to those cases against Parlade, Badoy, et al., Esperon, with respect to the red tagging. Those cases were already dismissed. Sa kadahilanan po na wala naman pong batas na nagbabawal sa red tagging. In the absence of a law, we can not arrogate unto ourselves by saying na nag-violate ka ng red tagging.
Former President Rodrigo Duterte himself identified the Makabayan bloc as fronts of the CPP, NPA, NDF, including Manuel's Kabataan Party List, Gabriela, ACT Teachers, and the 2 party lists, Bayan Muna and Anak Pawis, which lost in the last elections.
Itong mga legal fronts ng komunista, lahat yan, Makabayan, Bayan, they are all legal fronts. Gabriela, hindi yan sila, we are not red tagging you. We are identifying you as members in a grand conspiracy comprising all the legal fronts that they have organized, headed by NDF. Tapos yung sa armed struggle, ang New People's Army, NDF, at Communist Party of the Philippines.
During the hearing, Manuel was taken aback when Martires mentioned how their office is sometimes being used for personal interest unrelated to the Ombudsman's jurisdiction, especially in the context of red tagging issues.
Dahil nga walang red tagging, pa-file mo ng kaso ng violation ng Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. Para lang po yun yung nagpalusot tayo Diba? Ito yung tinatawag na yung palusot Kung sa sibuyas, ito yung palusot na pagtatanim ng sibuyas o ani.
Ang basis naman po ay Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, pati din yung Code of Conduct.
May mga pagkakataon po, ginagamit ang ombudsman. Sana wag naman po ganun. Dahil hindi naman po ang ombudsman karakarakan mag-action sa inyong mga kaso na wala naman talagang kinalalaman. Pero kung papalusutan kami na red tagging ang rason, pero sasabihin hindi, nag-violate ka ng Section 3E. Because Section 3 says undue injury to the government or the individual. Yan ang cause ng undue injury na yon. Kung red tagging, wala akong binayolate na batas.
For Ganamabul of Philippines, MJ Mondihar, SMNI News.
The powerful earthquake that struck Morocco left rescuers racing to find people trapped under the rubble as the death toll rose to 2,500. Meanwhile, survivors are in need of food, water, and shelter due to the worsening conditions in the aftermath of the devastation. Cablelink reports.
Rescuers spent their night searching for survivors after a powerful earthquake struck Marrakech, Morocco last Friday night. Relief workers are also scrambling to reach severely damaged neighborhoods to provide aid. The magnitude 7 earthquake, the deadliest in Morocco in over 60 years, turned buildings to rubble, and survivors struggling to find shelter and what's left of their homes.
My house was here, but I don't see it now. It was destroyed by the earthquake. I came back to take some personal items, but I forgot where I was. I can't go back now, can't even walk. I fled at the right time before it was too late. Thank you so much for your kindness and your help.
The powerful earthquake struck at around 11:11 p.m. This is a tragedy and a natural catastrophe. Most of the people in the old city were sleeping at home. We woke up and fled to save ourselves. We were lucky to reach the street before the buildings collapsed. This house is now dangerous. It could collapse at any time. We lost the house, but we are alive. That's the most important thing. I hope the authorities will repair or rebuild all the damaged houses. Now my family must leave, but we have nowhere to go.
This is the strongest earthquake that rocked the city of Agadir, Morocco since 1960, wherein 12,000 to 15,000 people were killed. The Moroccan armed forces are also helping in search and rescue operations and have built a tent for survivors. The Moroccan government also said it accepts aid from countries and will coordinate with them if needed. World leaders, meanwhile, expressed their condolences and offered their solidarity to Morocco. Secretary General Antonio Guterres also said the United Nations stands ready to assist the Moroccan government in any way needed. Chinese President Xi Jinping also offered his condolences and expressed readiness to provide humanitarian aid to the said country. As the death toll continued to rise, the Moroccan government declared a 3-day national mourning, with King Mohammed VI offering a prayer for his country. He also gave instructions to continue field relief efforts and provide care to the victims. Cablelink reporting, SMNI News.
The most controversial part of the G20 Delhi Declaration was probably the issue of Ukraine. But India managed to pull it off, and as a result, the declaration notably refrained from condemning Russia, acknowledging instead the differences among member nations regarding Ukraine conflict. Justine Nazario reports.
The G20 summit held in New Delhi concluded with a final declaration recognizing the lack of consensus among the world's major economies regarding the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who hosted the summit, shared the news of the agreement on the final declaration with other world leaders. The disagreement over the Ukrainian issue had been a significant stumbling block in the summit's proceedings. Western nations had pushed for a strong condemnation of Russia's military actions in Ukraine, but this stance faced resistance from other G20 member states. In fact, the paragraph specifically addressing the geopolitical situation remained empty in the draft of declaration until the last moment. Despite the absence of Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping at the summit, the Western nations failed to sway the positions of the global South countries regarding Ukraine crisis. A portion of the article also reaffirms that the G20 is not the platform to resolve geopolitical and security issues, although the bloc acknowledges that these issues can have significant consequences for the global economy. The final declaration acknowledged the human suffering and negative impacts of conflict on global food and energy security, supply chains, macro-financial stability, inflation, and economic growth. It emphasized that developing countries which had already been grappling with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic were the most affected by the ongoing conflict. However, the declaration also pointed out that G20 member nations held different views and assessments of the situation concerning the Ukraine conflict. Despite these differences, world leaders pledged to come together to address the crisis' impact on the global economy. They also expressed their openness to supporting initiatives that promote a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace in Ukraine, aligning with the principles outlined in the United Nations Charter. Reporting, this is Justine Nazario, SMNI News.
The conclusion of the summit earned praise from G20 members, including China, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, and Russia. But Ukraine was unhappy with the result. Jane Cognita reports.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who represented President Vladimir Putin at the recently concluded G20 summit in New Delhi, praised host country India, which he claimed has helped to consolidate the countries of the Global South. According to Lavrov, India has managed to coalesce G20 members from the Global South. He also said that the Global South stood up to protect their legitimate interests, which made it possible to prevent the West from once again Ukrainizing the entire agenda of the G20 summit and diverting attention from the problems currently being faced by emerging economies. The Russian foreign minister also said that the New Delhi declarations mentioned in the Ukraine crisis are in accordance with the principles of the UN Charter. He also thanked India for preventing attempts to politicize the G20. While the United Kingdom and the United States talked up the joint statement as well, Ukraine expressed disappointment with the outcome, saying that the G20 had nothing to be proud of. To recall, Ukraine was invited in the 2022 G20 summit in Bali, Indonesia. However, it failed to receive an invitation from India. The G20 paved the way for talks between countries on the sidelines, and among them were talks between Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Egyptian President Fattah al-Sisi on Sunday. Both leaders successfully held face-to-face talks after a decade-long rift between their countries. Meanwhile, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud praised India for its successful G20 stewardship. Saudi Arabia and India also unveiled a major trade and transport route linking Europe, the Middle East, and India as part of a broad alliance between said countries. Following the conclusion of this year's G20 summit, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in a closing ceremony, handed a gavel to Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who is set to take over the presidency of the bloc in December. Reporting, this has been Jane Cognita, SMNI News.
A Chinese Navy hospital deployed for a humanitarian mission in the South Pacific ended its trip in the region. Jillian Libui has the details.
East Timor became the last country in Southeast Asia visited by the Chinese Navy hospital ship Peace Ark. Dubbed Harmonious Mission 2023, Peace Ark left its home port from eastern China in early July with 126 medical personnel on board. The floating hospital toured 5 countries in the region, which include Tonga, Kiribati, Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, and Timor-Leste. The military-run vessel provided free medical services to thousands of Chinese and residents from the 5 countries in the South Pacific region. The ship has sailed to more than 40 countries since it was deployed in 2008. Meanwhile, the U.S. hospital ship Mercy is due to visit the Solomon Islands during the Pacific Games later this year. Navy hospitals from China and the United States visited the Solomon Islands in recent years amid growing competition for influence in the region. Reporting from New South Wales, this has been Gillian Libwood, SMNI News, Australia.
Japan and South Korea's top leaders agreed to deepen their bilateral ties. King Song reports.
Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol both agreed to keep working together to deepen the bilateral relations between Seoul and Tokyo. The two leaders made the statement on the sidelines of the recently concluded G20 summit in New Delhi, India. Kishida also reportedly told Yoon that Japan has hopes for South Korea to chair the trilateral talks with China this year. Meanwhile, officials of Japan, South Korea, and China will hold talks in Seoul on September 25th. South Korea has served as chairman of the trilateral framework since it was formed in 2020. But now officials said they will look into the possibility of holding a three-way summit between South Korea, Japan, and China, as the ties between Tokyo and Beijing have soured since the release of treated radioactive wastewater into the Pacific Ocean from the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Meanwhile, relations between Japan and South Korea have been improving. The Japanese government, the two countries' leaders, have so far held 6 bilateral talks in as many months. Solisabugo Kim Sang-imnida, SMNI News, South Korea.
Newsline World will be back after the break.
Iniibig ko ang Pilipinas.
Ito ang aking lupang sinilang.
Presidential Legal Counsel Juan Ponce Enrile slammed as a disrespectful act seen on national TV. MJ Mondihar reports.
The Association of Social Media Broadcasters of the Philippines Incorporated has filed a criminal case against TV host comedian Vice Ganda and partner Ian Perez. According to the group's lawyer, attorney Mark Tolentino, the charges relate to a violation of the cybercrime law. The group has temporarily declined to provide additional details regarding the reason for the filing of case, but said all questions will be answered during the group's upcoming press conference on Wednesday, September 13th. Meanwhile, Chief Presidential Legal Counsel Juan Ponce Enrile expressed his frustration with Vice Ganda over the weekend. This came after certain actions that Enrile referred to as salacious involving the controversial TV host. Enrile pointed out the issue of individuals in positions in power and influence who become indifferent to their actions and how they treat others. He described the comedian as disrespectful.
Sarili mo na lang ang iniisip mo. Akala mo, maganda yung ginagawa mo, pero bastos ka.
Yun.
Bastos ka ng tao. Hindi lang walang decency, abusado. Bastos. Pag wala pa ng araw, ganyan na yan.
Enrile also urged parents whose children are influenced by Vice Ganda to denounce the comedian.
Lahat ng pamilya na may mga anak na nasasaktan o nai-influensya, they should denounce her.
SMNI will remain open on the side of the accused. For Government of Philippines, I'm Jay Mondihar, SMNI News.
Israel's spy intelligence service Mossad warned that Russia could sell advanced weapons to Iran, a move it claimed will endanger the Jewish state. Verhil Parba reports.
Mossad Director David Barnea expressed concern about Iran possessing advanced weapons by purchasing them from Russia. Barnea said such a move could endanger Israel's peace and maybe even its existence. According to the Mossad chief, Iran had intended to provide Russia with short and long-range missiles in addition to the unmanned aerial vehicles or UAVs it had sold to Russia for the war in Ukraine. Israel claimed it has successfully prevented the sale of the drones. Meanwhile, Israel's national security advisor warned that Israel will act against Iran's enrichment of uranium if it exceeds 60% because that means Tehran is pursuing the use of nuclear weapons. The Iranian regime previously said it had sold a limited number of drones to Russia even before the war in Ukraine and maintained that the sale had not violated any provisions provided by the United Nations. Tehran also warned Israel not to play with fire and threatened retaliation over Israel's alleged involvement in a drone attack at a critical defense facility in central Iran in January of this year. Reporting, this has been Verhil Parba, SMNI News.
Chinese travelers planning to visit Thailand may no longer need to apply for a visa in the future after local lawmakers campaign to abolish the travel document. Chatmongkon Pisamaigoson reports.
Newly appointed cabinet members in Thailand will hold their first meeting after their oath taking this week. The proposed visa-free policy for Chinese visitors will be high on the agenda in the upcoming meeting. Local officials consider the proposed visa-free policy for Chinese visitors an effective short-term tourism stimulus and testifies to the government's commitment to boosting tourism. Thailand prides itself among the top tourist destinations in the world, while tourism serves as one of the country's prime foreign exchange earners. If the proposed measure gets enough support, local officials plan to implement the proposed visa waiver for Chinese travelers on October 1, coinciding with a week-long celebration of China's National Day. Thailand's newly appointed Prime Minister, Sethar Thavisin, has promised to prioritize tourism as an economic growth driver. One of his first tasks as premier was to tour Phuket, to get first-hand insights into the tourism situation. Chinese tourists comprise Phuket's largest group of foreign visitors, with 60,000 recorded traveling to the popular holiday destination last month. Thailand increased its target for international arrivals in 2023 to 30 million and aims to boost its tourism industry to nearly $100 billion in 2024. Besides China, Thailand also plans to ease its visa rules for travelers from India. The government also announced plans to allow international travelers to stay longer in the country to hit its tourism target next year. รายงานจากราชบุรีนายชันมงคลพิสมัยโกศล SMN News ประเทศไทย สวัสดีครับ
And before we end, may be inspired with the message of the appointed Son of God. You don't have to die in order to see heaven. Heaven is here on the earth today. And that's all for today's edition of Newsline World. For more news update, you may visit SMNINewsChannel.com or follow us on our official social media accounts on Rumble, Facebook, and Twitter. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, I am Franco Baranda. Thank you for watching Newsline World. And thank you to our beloved pastor, Pastor Apollo C. Cablelink, for the opportunity to be part of this program. May you continue to listen on SMNI as it delivers nothing but fair, truthful, and balanced news, because SMNI is your source of credible news.
Visa.